those of you that have come out tonight, again, it was very cold evening, and of course the leadership here at the Church of the Holy Trinity for providing us with this stunningly beautiful space to discuss a really important topic. So, as you've heard, my name is Melissa Jane Kronfeld, and I'm the co-founder and co-chair of the Nexus Working Group on Human Trafficking and Modern Slavery, an initiative of the Nexus Global Youth Summit, which is a movement of more than 2,500 millennial activists, wealth holders, influencers, and social innovators working together to tackle the world's most pressing challenges. And in fact, as a side note, they are right now at the White House meeting with the government to talk about how we can bridge those divides between civil society, wealth, and government. But I chose to stay here tonight to enjoy this meeting here with you guys. So I am personally of the belief that there is no more pressing challenge confronting civilization today than that which is posed by human trafficking and modern slavery. And I have a dream that one day we will live in a world that is completely and totally slave-free. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, whose legacy and honor we've assembled here today, once said, "There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right." But when it comes to the cause of freedom, a cause so important that Dr. King gave his life for it, there is no higher calling that any person can have than to stand and fight for the freedoms of all people. As Americans or residents of this great nation, freedom is a byproduct of our very being. If I may so boldly edit René Descartes, as Americans we can truly say, "I am, therefore I exist freely." But the protections afforded to us by the laws of this great state and the laws of this even greater land simply do not extend to all people. Despite slavery having been prohibited in every corner of the earth, more than 30 million people continue to live in bondage today. Hundreds of thousands, according to our very best estimates, right here in the United States. Let me repeat that number. Polaris, run by my friend and mentor Brad Miles, perhaps the most widely respected anti-trafficking organization in the world today, estimates there are hundreds of thousands of victims of slavery in America right now. So when we talk about freedom, particularly in the context of today's discussion around civil rights, women's rights, and gender justice, why do we ignore those that are not party to this conversation? Slaves cannot stand up and be counted. They cannot have their voice be heard. They do not have a choice. And that is why Women's Bill of Rights, based on the 1979 United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, is so critical for us to achieve here in New York. As Dr. King reminds us, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And where the reality of slavery is that finite disappointment, a CEDAW-based Women's Bill of Rights here in New York is the infinite hope we need to end slavery now. Not only will it serve the general goal of moving us as a community towards gender justice, gender equality, and gender equity, it will also specifically serve as a mechanism for the continuing strengthening and enforcement of the laws protecting women and girls from slavery and trafficking in New York State. Article 6 of CEDAW states that parties shall take all appropriate measures, including legislation, to suppress all forms of trafficking in women and exploitation of prostitution in women. Yet as Rachel Roy, the founder of an equally renowned and respected New York-based girls' education and mentoring services, more commonly known as GEMS, with whom I've had the great honor and pleasure to work with, tells us that an estimated 300,000 women and girls, just women and girls, not including men and boys, are trafficked into and within this country each and every single year. 300,000 women and girls. And New York represents one of the most desirable source, transit, and destination points for sex trafficking and slavery in the world. Slavery is as prevalent in New York as it is in any large urban city. The most common type of slavery and trafficking here by a wide margin is sexual exploitation, followed by labor trafficking. Slaves and trafficked persons can be found in equal measure across our state as domestic laborers, in the restaurant and food services, in those remaining factories upstate, as well as in retail, small business, and unsurprisingly and increasingly among the homeless. Trafficked persons are most typically exploited in commercial front brothels, followed by hotels, motels, residential brothels, online platforms such as Backpage.com, and through privately run escort services. These individuals are almost exclusively female, and are as likely to be foreign nationals as they are citizens of the United States. Approximately 2/3 are adults, and 1/3 are people under the age of 18. You should know, as a side note, often those that get into into the life of trafficking or forced into the life of trafficking start as young as the age of 8 and are typically trafficked by a family member. And although anyone can be trafficked, the data clearly illustrates that poverty is a key factor, with broken homes and even worse, broken foster care system that provides no support or means for upwards mobility, fueling the commercial sex industry in every city and every town across New York State. There is not a single community that is immune from this societal plague. Injustice anywhere, Dr. King remarked, is a threat to justice everywhere. And that is why today's discussion and its ultimate goal is so urgent and so critical. Securing the Women's Bill of Rights with the CEDAW framework will begin to rectify the grave injustices that women face in New York. It will further emphasize the root causes behind trafficking and slavery through the promotion of political, professional, personal, social, economic, and cultural equality. It will provide a unique focus on the challenges that women face in regards to employment and health. With its demand for legal protections for all women, it will allow a safe means of reporting victimization for citizens, documented foreign nationals, and even those here without documentation. And most importantly, in its demand for governments to focus its efforts specifically on fostering opportunities for women and girls, it will provide a platform for their maturation, evolution, and increased contribution of women to society in a way and through those means most safe, secure, and sustainable to them. Women and girls are a unique class of people, one of 2 primary genders, with transgenderism and gender fluidity notwithstanding, and comprising more than half of the global population. Yet they remain the primary victims of trafficking and slavery in the world. This situation can no longer be considered acceptable. It simply cannot be tolerated anymore. The adoption of the Bill of Rights based on CEDAW is the next best step that we can take to recognize this issue, establish a platform for change, and create a vehicle through which we can and will end modern slavery trafficking once and for all. Now is not the time to be silent on the issues of trafficking and slavery, nor is it time to be silent about the plight of those women and girls that are enslaved right here in New York and all across the United States. Dr. King once said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." No one here looks like to me today they would willingly choose to mark that beginning. So let us instead make a commitment here tonight. Let us form a pact. Let us make an agreement together and declare that nothing matters more than the defense of human rights, of civil rights, of women's rights. Let us declare that gender justice is not something which we aspire to achieve in some distant future, but that it be a reality of our present day and age. Let us commit to one another tonight not to be silent anymore. For justice is only one when we demand it be so. I therefore implore you to leave here tonight and consider what you hear, and tomorrow tell anyone that will listen that trafficking and enslaving of human beings, of women and girls, is alive and well right here in New York City. And they have a responsibility, in fact, they have a burden to demand freedom through the justice that they receive. In conclusion, I'd like to remind you that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So let us be the light on the path to freedom for all people, but especially for our women and girls. Thank you.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness, he says. Only light can drive out darkness.